Chapter 131. The next day. It was late in the morning before Karen Daly woke up. She tried to move, but her body was still very weak. However, she did not have the same kind of pain as their first time. She opened her eyes and looked out the window, but she did not see Kevin Kyle. She picked up her phone to check the time. It was almost 12 o'clock at noon. He was so busy, he would definitely not sit by the window and wait for her to wake up. While thinking, Faye Reed called. She slid over the screen and answered it. Then she heard Faye Reed's anxious voice. "Karen, come to the studio quickly. There is a customer who is not satisfied with all the designs. My hope is all on you." "What kind of customer?" Karen Daly frowned and asked. "I can't tell you clearly on the phone. You come over first." After that, Faye Reed hung up without giving Karen Daly a chance to speak. Hearing Faye Reed's anxious tone, Karen Daly got up quickly and prepared to rush to the studio as soon as possible. As soon as she sat up, she saw a note on the side of the bed with several words written by Kevin Kyle. "I'm going on a work trip for 3 days. Kevin Kyle." Karen Daly looked at the words and read them in a low voice. She didn't see Kevin Kyle sitting by the window when she opened her eyes. She was a little disappointed, but after seeing the note saying that he will be on a work trip for the next 3 days, that disappointment earlier was nothing compared to this. Kevin Kyle was on a work trip, and the studio was busy. Karen Daly immediately decided to simply pack something and take Momo to Faye Reed's place to stay for a few days, which was convenient for her to work. When Karen Daly and Momo got into the taxi together, Kevin Kyle called. When she answered the phone, she heard Kevin Kyle's low and sexy voice. "Are you awake?" "Yes, I am awake." Karen Daly nodded. "What's the matter?" "I'll ask Aunt Jen to prepare something for you to eat when you wake up." Karen Daly said. "No thanks. I'm in the car with Momo. I'm going to stay at Faye Reed's for a few days for work." Hearing Karen Daly's words, Kevin Kyle kept quiet at the other end of the phone. After a while, he asked, "Are you angry?" They spent a lot of time together last night, but he arrived at the airport early this morning and flew to another city on business, leaving her alone at home. She should be angry. "Ah!" Karen Daly paused and said, "I'm not angry." "Why do you think I'm angry?" Karen Daly didn't understand why he thought so, and Kevin Kyle didn't give her an answer. After a few words, they hung up the phone. After arriving at the studio, Karen Daly found out that it was Faye Reed who took the order, but the couple was not satisfied with the styles designed by several designers in the studio. Faye Reed panicked and called Karen Daly over, who was still recovering from her injuries. Karen Daly put Momo down and let it free. Karen Daly got the information and requirements of the customers from Faye Reed. The wedding dress was ordered by a couple in their 50s. They lived together for decades, but they didn't have any wedding ceremonies before. Therefore, their children planned to carry out a wedding ceremony for the two old couples during their golden anniversary. The wedding was set in a few months, so they did not have much time to change the design draft. It would take time to make the product after the draft gets approved. The new year was around the corner. If the design draft couldn't be completed, it will be impossible for them to finish the products on time. That was why Faye Reed was so anxious. After knowing the requirements of the couple, Karen Daly knew very well that the wedding ceremony was not that important to them. They wanted health, peace, happiness. However, the couple was not willing to let their children's efforts go to waste, so they found this studio. "Faye, were the designs of wedding dress mostly dreamy?" Karen Daly asked while drawing the design. "How did you know?" Faye Reed nodded and looked at Karen Daly in surprise. Karen Daly said, "Then let's not get into Western-style dresses. We could try an Oriental style with happiness and health as the main theme." Hearing Karen Daly's words, Faye Reed felt enlightened. She immediately clapped her hands and said, "Karen, it's a deal. Then please hurry up and prepare the first draft for the couple to see. As long as they are satisfied, then I won't feel guilty." Karen Daly stretched out her hand and pointed at Faye Reed's head. "Take care of Momo for me. I'll draw the first draft first, so that the customers can see it sooner." "Please, Mrs. Kyle," Faye Reed said with a smile. Hearing the title of Mrs. Kyle, Karen Daly seemed to be a little happier. She gave Faye Reed a big smile and said, "Go and do your work. Don't disturb me." When she drew the design draft, her mind was full of thoughts about growing old with Kevin Kyle. Kevin Kyle's hair had turned white, and time had left marks on his handsome face. However, he still stood straight with the same character. Holding her hand, he led her to the red carpet and slowly walked to the center of the stage. In the center of the stage, there was a line of words, "Mr. Kevin Kyle and Karen Daly's golden anniversary." Some people said that when it came to designing works, the most important thing was to be sentimental. First of all, you have to love your work, so that others would accept your work. Karen Daly was designing the dress for them, but she designed them while imagining her old golden anniversary. So the dress designed by her would naturally be satisfying. The next day, when Faye Reed sent Karen Daly's draft to the couple to see, they were very satisfied and made the order immediately. Faye Reed asked Karen Daly curiously, "Why do you know the couple likes that theme?" Karen Daly raised her red and tender lips and said with a smile, "Because I hope that I can be like them when I'm old. Then when I think about what I will look like when I'm old, I know what I need." Fortunately, I asked you to come back to work. You didn't work in the studio for 3 years. How much money do you think I have lost? I'm back now, am I not? I'll work harder to earn back all the profits that you have lost in the past 3 years. My god of fortune, are you going home tonight? No. Have you quarreled? He's on a work trip. There's no one to talk to when I am home. Karen Daly thought for a moment. Miss Reed, let's go for steamboat together tonight. That's what I thought. Fay Reed picked up the coat and put it on. Karen, is it really because he is on a work trip that you don't want to go home? Last night, because she was in a hurry to draw the design, Karen Daly didn't go home, and Fay Reed didn't think too much about it. Today, Karen Daly still refused to go home, so people would think of other reasons. Do you think I had an affair with someone, so I don't want to go back? Said with a smile. However, when she turned around, she saw Kevin Kyle standing at the door of the studio. Chapter 132. Kevin Kyle was wearing a silver gray handmade suit that he usually wore. He stood straight at the door, and he did not display any expressions. His eyes fell on Karen Daly. Fay Reed also saw Kevin Kyle. She smiled and said, Mr. Kyle, you are here to pick up Mrs. Kyle, aren't you? It's time to get off work. You bring her home. Okay. Kevin Kyle nodded politely. I thought that you were on a work trip for 3 days. Why did you come back early? Karen Daly looked at him and smiled, but she was a little afraid to approach him. His face looked calm as usual. He was used to being cold, but when she looked into his eyes, she could feel that he was angry. Kevin Kyle did not say anything and just looked at Karen Daly quietly. His eyes were deep and focused entirely on Karen Daly. Fay Reed pulled Karen Daly's sleeves gently and whispered, A small quarrel between husband and wife is common. Since he came to pick you up, go back with him. We didn't quarrel, and there was no conflict. Karen Daly was not angry with him. It seemed that Kevin Kyle was angry with her. She didn't know what she did that made him angry with her. Anyway, there is only a few days before the holiday. I'm going back to Beaufort City. You can work from home. Don't come to the studio. Fay Reed patted Karen Daly and whispered, By the way, it seems that Ivan had returned to Italy. We will talk about the study later after the new year. We agreed to have steamboat together at night, Karen Daly said. Let your man accompany you if you want to eat something. I don't want to be hated. Fay Reed gave Karen Daly her bag, pushed her towards Kevin Kyle, and said, Mr. Kyle, take your wife away. Don't let her pester me all day long. Kevin Kyle looked cold and did not say a word. There was still no expression on his face. Karen Daly wanted to step back, but her waist was held by Kevin Kyle tightly. She moved and whispered, Let me take Momo. Momo had already run over, but because it was too small, no one noticed it if it did not make a sound. Karen Daly picked Momo up and said to Fay Reed, Then I'll go back first. Fay Reed quickly waved her hand and said, Bye. After walking for some time, Kevin Kyle still did not speak. Karen Daly looked at him carefully and asked, What's wrong? Was there something wrong with your work? Kevin Kyle's face was gloomy, and he still did not say a word. He slightly increased the strength of his hand around her waist. Karen Daly pursed her lips and asked, Who on earth provoked you? If you tell me, I'll deal with him for you. No matter what Karen Daly said, Kevin Kyle still kept his face darkened and did not speak. If he was not holding her waist, she would have thought that this person did not exist at all. After talking for some time, he still ignored her, so Karen Daly stopped saying anything. She patted Momo's head in her arms and sighed helplessly. If he wanted to be cold, let him be. But in such a cold winter, it was so cold that it made people feel uncomfortable. Until she got in the car, Karen Daly sat in the passenger seat, and Kevin Kyle sat in the driver's seat. Just as she was ready to put on the seatbelt, Kevin Kyle stretched out his arm and grabbed her head and kissed her crazily. His movements were fierce and wild, like a mad beast. Karen Daly only felt pain in her lips. He bit her lips, and blood flowed from her lips, and the smell of blood spread in their mouths. Karen Daly did not struggle. If he was angry, she would let him let out his anger. Just like when she was upset, she would let it out in front of him. When she encountered unhappy things, she will let it out on him, because he was the one closest to her. When Kevin Kyle did this, Karen Daly naturally thought he would feel the same way. However, as Karen Daly just silently took the blow, it made his anger even more intense. His original plan was to go on a work trip for 3 days, but Karen Daly didn't answer his call today. He couldn't get in touch with her from morning to noon. Worrying about her safety, he immediately made up his mind to push the work that had to be handled by him this afternoon to the next day. He had to come back to assure her safety first. All his worries were relieved when he saw that she was fine. At the same time, another inexplicable anger rose in his heart. He called her so many times. As long as she cared for him, she would make time to call him back, but she did not. He was very angry that she didn't answer his call. He was so angry that she didn't take him seriously. Kevin Kyle took another bite on Karen Daly's lips before letting her go. He glanced at her lips that had been bitten by him, then looked away and started the car. The car's route was not to their house. Karen Daly asked cautiously, Kevin Kyle, are you going in the wrong direction? Kevin Kyle drove the car without looking at her. He completely ignored her. Karen Daly got tired. She stroked Momo's head in her arms and looked out of the window, looking at the scenery on both sides of the road. She saw couples walking hand in hand on the road. There were also couples embracing each other. She looked away and looked at Kevin Kyle. He was still gloomy and did not talk to her, nor did he intend to pay attention to her. "Stop the car," she said. He ignored it. "I ask you to stop the car," she said. Kevin Kyle finally glanced sideways at her, but he did not intend to stop the car. "Kevin Kyle, stop the car first. Let's have a good talk." As she spoke, she reached out to pull his steering wheel. Kevin Kyle happened to see the red light. He stopped his car and looked straight ahead, ignoring her. "Kevin Kyle, why are you mad? What did I do to make you unhappy? Tell me." If she really did something wrong, she was willing to change it, but he did not say anything and refused to communicate with her. The couple had nothing to say among themselves. They didn't say anything to each other and were only angry at each other. Did he want to give her the silent treatment? How would she know why he was mad? Hearing Karen Daly's words, Kevin Kyle's face looked even worse. He looked sideways at her, then looked away and continued driving. Along the way, Karen Daly did not talk to him anymore until the car entered the Rovio Skyview Bay area and then came to the exclusive villa area named Noyuan. The door opened automatically, and a guard came over immediately. Kevin Kyle got off the car and threw the car key to the guard. He looked back and found out that Karen Daly was still sitting in the passenger's seat. Kevin Kyle looked over and found that Karen Daly was looking at him. She pursed her lips and blinked her big watery eyes at him pitifully. "My injuries seem to have torn." Chapter 133. After hearing Karen Daly's words, Kevin Kyle immediately walked over. He opened the car door and picked her up. At the same time, he ordered the people around him coldly, "Call the doctor." Karen Daly hooked her arm around his neck and kissed him on the corner of his mouth. Then she smiled proudly and said, "As long as you are not angry, my legs won't hurt." He was deceived by her acting. Kevin Kyle looked at her smiling face, and her smile was so bright and charming. He was triggered and felt a wave of emotions. He came back because he was worried about her safety. He didn't come back to irritate her. As long as she was fine, he shouldn't be angry with her. "Do you still want to be angry with me?" Karen Daly blinked and slipped down from his arms. She reached out to touch his chest and touched the position of his heart. The bite marks left by her at the night after they made love. Kevin Kyle thought of the same thing as her. He grabbed her hand and warned her in a deep voice, "Don't move." "Then tell me, are you still angry with me?" She blinked and looked at him mischievously. She wanted him to admit that he was not angry anymore. Kevin Kyle was unwilling to say anything. He took her hand and said, "Let's go into the house." "Momo." Karen Daly turned around and called out for Momo. When the little fellow followed her, she asked Kevin Kyle, "Where is this place?" Kevin Kyle said, "Our new home." "Our new home?" Karen Daly looked around and couldn't believe what she heard. In the villa area of Skycage Bay, it was said that ordinary people could not afford to buy a villa here. Being able to afford it was not enough. One needed to be evaluated in other life aspects as well. But soon, Karen Daly realized that this was the Skycage Bay, a high-end project for the development of the Rovio real estate. Kevin Kyle worked so hard for his big boss every day. Maybe this was the reward he got from his work. She smiled and joked, "Is this a gift from your big boss? If so, will every senior executive have such a villa?" No. Kevin Kyle didn't know how to answer her. He didn't tell her that he is Leo Kyle. At first, he felt that there was no need to explain it to her. She didn't ask, so he didn't tell her. Later, their relationship developed slowly. She heard some reports about the identity of the Leo Kyle, and she didn't have a good impression of Leo Kyle. If she knew his identity, she would not be able to accept it at once, so he had to think it over and find a suitable opportunity to make it clear to her. "Young master, young madam." Aunt Anne, the housekeeper, led a couple of helpers to stand in a row and welcomed the masters to officially move in. "Yes," Kevin Kyle nodded. "Young madam, I'm Aunt Anne, the housekeeper here. If you need anything, just tell me." Aunt Anne spoke on behalf of all the helpers. "Thank you, Aunt Anne." Looking at this group of people and seeing such a mansion, Karen Daly was still a little nervous. She grabbed hold of Kevin Kyle and whispered, "Kevin Kyle, we better not move in." Karen Daly felt that she cannot accept all this. She felt more comfortable living in a smaller place. If someone else served her, she would feel uncomfortable. She felt that Dreamland City was more like home. Every day after returning home, it was only Kevin Kyle and her. No one would disturb them. However, at this place, there were so many people working around them, so it was inconvenient for her to do anything for or with Kevin Kyle. Kevin Kyle said, "During the new year, the elders will come back from abroad, and everyone will live here. As the owner of this house, you should be familiar with the environment first, and then you can treat everyone well." Hearing Kevin Kyle's words, Karen Daly suddenly panicked. This kind of panic was not due to fear, but about the discomfort she felt when she was about to meet her husband's parents. Karen Daly asked in a hurry, "When will they arrive?" "In a few days." There was no news from the elders of the Kyle family. Kevin Kyle also had no clue. Besides, his father was fine with anything. He would go wherever he wanted and never let people around him make a reservation for him in advance. Hearing that there were still a few days left, Karen Daly quickly patted her chest to calm herself. the grandfather of the Kyle family. Kevin Kyle's parents were all elders of Kevin Kyle. They were his closest relatives. As someone from the younger generation, she must prepare some gifts for the elders. However, the Kyle family's background was far better than hers. What should she prepare for them? Thinking of this, Karen Daly looked at Kevin Kyle and said, "Kevin, what are your grandfather's and parents' hobbies? Can you tell me in detail? They are all easy to get along. As for the things that we should pay attention to, I will ask Aunt Anne to tell you about it tomorrow." Kevin Kyle, who had always been quiet, explained patiently to Karen Daly. His work was not done yet, and he had to leave early tomorrow morning. He had to rush to the meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning. He had no choice but to hand Karen Daly over to Aunt Anne and the others to take care of her. While walking, Kevin Kyle suddenly stopped and asked, "Why didn't you answer my calls today?" "Did you call me?" Karen Daly immediately looked for her mobile phone, but she could not find it. She looked at him and smiled embarrassedly. "Maybe I left it at Faye Reed's house, so I didn't hear your call." Hearing her explanation, Kevin Kyle frowned. Karen Daly suddenly smiled. "So you were angry just now because I didn't answer your call?" Kevin Kyle felt very awkward, but he still nodded. He had to let her know what she did wrong. She would not make the same mistake in the future. "Kevin, I'm sorry. You have to worry about me all the time. I will pay attention to it in the future." Thinking that he might have left his work and came back to find her because he didn't get through her phone, she felt so sorry. He patted her head and said, "Don't be so careless in the future." Karen Daly nodded heavily. "I won't let you get worried about me anymore in the future." Kevin Kyle took Karen Daly into the hall and took her around for a look. The decoration of the hall had a minimalist theme, similar to Kevin Kyle's usual style. Kevin Kyle added, "Our room is on the 3rd floor. Let's go and see our room first. For the other places, I'll ask Aunt Anne to show you around tomorrow." "Okay." Karen Daly nodded. Kevin Kyle held her hand, and she followed him up the marble stairs, step by step. The decoration style of their bedroom was exactly the same as the one in Dreamland City, but the size of this room was double the size of that, or even bigger. Chapter 134. There was a wardrobe room, changing room, bathroom, and a small study room. It was not only a bedroom but also a large suite. In a villa area like the Royal Bay, it was not an exaggeration to say that an inch of land was worth 100 gold. Not only did Kevin Kyle own such a luxurious villa in this place, but he also had so many people serving him at home. Was he really just a senior executive of Rovio Corporation Inc.? If not for the pictures of Leo Kyle on the internet, she would really think that Kevin Kyle was the legendary Leo Kyle from Rovio Corporation Inc. First of all, both of them were 28 years old. Kevin Kyle had a fair and humble temperament, good cultivation, and elegance. No matter how you look at him, people would think that his family must be extraordinary. "Would you like to have a look?" Kevin Kyle took Karen Daly to the wardrobe room. "Yes," Karen Daly nodded. Women love the wardrobe room very much. Karen Daly walked over and pulled open the wardrobe on the right. Her clothes and shoes were neatly placed, like a clothing store. She looked at Kevin Kyle and asked, "Did you prepare these clothes for me?" Kevin Kyle nodded and looked at her tenderly. "Do you like it?" "Of course I like it." There's no woman who doesn't like beautiful clothes, and she was no exception. But what she preferred was not the clothes in the wardrobe, but his love for her. On the left side of the wardrobe room was Kevin Kyle's clothes, about a dozen suits, all the silver-gray colors. She didn't know why he liked this series of clothing very much. The room inside was their bedroom, which was bigger than the main bedroom where they used to live. In particular, the large bed in the room was wide and big. No matter how much they rolled on the bed, they will not fall from the bed. Thinking of this, Karen Daly blushed without realizing and did not dare to look at Kevin Kyle. However, Kevin Kyle came over and held her from behind. He lowered his head and whispered in her ear, "I have to go out to work for 2 days. Wait for me at home." She didn't know if he did it on purpose. When he spoke, the warm breath was on her ears and neck, which made her ears and neck turn red. "Okay." Karen Daly nodded vigorously, but she did not have the courage to look up at him. "Karen?" He called her name again in a low voice. "Huh? Come with me on a work trip next time." When she was not beside him, he always had trouble falling asleep, and his mind was full of her. "Don't worry. I won't misplace my phone again like today. You can go on a work trip without worrying." Karen Daly was oblivious towards his deeper meaning in his request. Kevin Kyle was not willing to explain. After taking a light breath, he hugged her in his arms again. The next day, Kevin Kyle left early. Karen Daly also got up early with him, because this place was too new for her and it didn't feel like home. Furthermore, there were too many people in the house, and they were all from the Kyle family. She didn't want her future mother-in-law to think that she was a lazy wife before she saw her. Karen Daly wanted to go and buy some New Year goods, but all the New Year goods and errands were already being attended to by the helpers. She didn't need to help with anything. She was the owner of the house, but in fact, she was just someone who did not do anything. After lunch, Karen Daly felt bored and went to the backyard alone, basking in the winter sunshine. "Catch that puppy. It's so dirty you can't let it enter the house. You know that young master hates these little animals the most." Suddenly, there was a voice. She looked for the source of the voice and saw two women chasing after Momo. Momo ran while barking to resist. Karen Daly walked out and said, "Momo." After hearing the sound, Momo turned around and ran to Karen Daly. It seemed like Momo had been greatly frightened. Karen Daly caught the little body that was rushing over and gently patted its little head. She comforted Momo in a soft voice. "Don't be afraid, Mum is here. Young madam, please give it to us." The two maids spoke politely, but they said please in a very tense tone. Karen Daly smiled gently and said, "Momo is afraid of strangers. I'll take care of it. Don't have to trouble you. Young madam, we are going to disinfect it." The maid paused for a moment. Then she said, "Young master is a germaphobe. Wherever he is, such little animals are not allowed to appear." Really? Karen Daly saw that Kevin Kyle had a good relationship with Momo. Was the young master they talked about really Kevin Kyle? "Young madam, I'll go with you to help with the disinfection." Since a big family had its own rules, Karen Daly would not make trouble. However, Momo was afraid of strangers, so it should not be a problem for her to help Momo personally. The two maids exchanged glances and said, "Young madam, this way please." 2 days later, the whole Nuo garden was decorated, and every corner of the garden was decorated with a festive theme. Karen Daly hasn't had a good New Year's Eve for 3 years. Seeing everyone busy and the house was decorated with lanterns and streamers, it felt good. "Aunt Anne, can you tell me about the preference of the elders of the Kyle family?" Karen Daly wanted to know more about the elders of the Kyle family from Aunt Anne. Anyway, this was the first time she would be meeting with the Kyle family. She had to give them some welcome gifts. She didn't have much money, and the elders of the Kyle family must have had everything they needed, so she wanted to prepare some meaningful small gifts by herself, according to their preferences. Anyway, she wanted to put some effort and leave a good impression for the elders of the Kyle family. Aunt Anne said, "Old Master likes calligraphy and painting, Master likes traveling, and Madam likes embroidery." After getting this information, Karen Daly went to prepare her gifts. Karen Daly knew that there was a cultural street in Chatterton Town which sells all kinds of antiques and paintings. Not all of them were authentic or good, but if you put effort into it, you could definitely find some precious goods. As for Kevin's dad, who liked traveling, Karen Daly thought about it over and over again, but she couldn't figure out what gift should be given to him. Mother Kyle's hobby was easy for her. One of the 4 famous embroidery workshops was located in Chatterton Town. Karen Daly was ready to shop. It took her a whole morning to find several experts who knew about calligraphy and painting, and then she found a piece of calligraphy work that she was very satisfied with. After a simple lunch, she went to the famous embroidery street and personally chose a double-sided embroidery for Mother Kyle. These things were carefully chosen by her. She was sure Kevin Kyle's parents would like them. Chapter 135. It took Karen Daly the whole day to prepare the gifts for Grandpa Kyle and Kevin Kyle's mother. Next, she had to think about what to get for Kevin Kyle's father and Mia Kyle. Karen Daly planned to call Kevin Kyle and ask him for advice on the gift for his father. As for the gift to Mia Kyle, Karen Daly had a hard time deciding. She couldn't think of a suitable gift for Mia Kyle. Mia Kyle was deeply loved by the Kyle family. She had been spoiled by them since she was a child. Whatever she wanted, she will have it. After thinking about it, she didn't come out with an answer. The taxi that Karen Daly took had arrived at the villa area of Seaview Bay. Since foreign vehicles were forbidden from entering the villa area, Karen Daly had to get off the car and walked in. It would take about half an hour to walk to their house from the main entrance of the Seaview Bay. It was already getting late, so Karen Daly picked up her pace while carrying the nicely wrapped gifts. Kevin Kyle was not at home, so Karen Daly did not want to live in this completely new place. She was having a hard time to get used to this. Those helpers called her young madam politely, which sounded polite, yet distant. It made her feel that they did not see her as one of them. Karen Daly often saw this when she was with Kevin Kyle. When those strangers greet him, he will be polite and distant. Kevin Kyle. She thought of him again. During noon, he called and said that he would only come back tomorrow. She would be able to see him in less than a day, but Karen Daly felt that time passed so slow when Kevin Kyle was not around. She really hoped that when she returned home, he would be waiting for her, but she knew that he will not come back so soon. Kevin Kyle couldn't come back. She couldn't blame him also. After all, she was the one who left her mobile phone at Faye Reed's house 2 days ago. Kevin Kyle couldn't find her through the phone, so he flew back and postponed his work. It was almost the new year, and the elders of the Kyle family will come here. As the day drew near, she felt insecure. Perhaps when Kevin Kyle comes back, he will be by her side, then she would feel less insecure. It will usually take half an hour to walk back home, but today, Karen Daly walked fast that it only took her about 20 minutes to arrive. After walking for such a long time, she felt much warmer. The security guard opened the door for her and greeted politely. "Young madam, good evening." Karen Daly nodded and smiled. Seeing this large Nuo garden, Karen Daly tried to imagine Kevin Kyle's family background and his income. She didn't know how big the land was, but it would take a few minutes to walk to the main room from the security room. Along the way there were pavilions, plants, and trees, as if it was a leisure scenic spot. Moreover, the main building they lived in was a 4-story high Chatterton Town-style building, surrounded by various facilities such as gym, swimming pool, a large patch of grass behind, and even a golf course. In short, the luxury facilities here were beyond Karen Daly's imagination. In the past, she thought that the villa area where Daly family lived in was already very upscale, but compared with Seaview Bay, the difference was obvious. Perhaps this estate really lived up to its name. Although the elders of the Kyle family lived in the United States for many years, they still cared a lot about traditional culture at home. Every New Year, they would still come back here to celebrate the New Year. They would gather their friends and relatives. Karen Daly knew that Kevin Kyle was going to introduce her to the Kyle family when everyone got together during the New Year. Karen Daly could not eat or sleep well for the past 2 days due to this. She felt as if there was a big stone crushing on her heart, and she could not breathe. Thinking of this, Karen Daly could not help but clench the bag in her hand, hoping that the elders of the Kyle family could see her efforts. Today, the lights of the whole villa were turned on. From afar, it was as beautiful as the Palace of Jade Lake. Chatterton Town is my hometown. I grew up here, and the weather here is good. I'll just walk around. I will be fine. Go back to your room and do your work. It's cold outside. You're not feeling well. Go inside and rest. You can come out tomorrow when the sun is out. Hail. Karen Daly was about to enter the house when she suddenly heard a conversation between a man and a woman. She stopped abruptly and looked for the source of the voice. She saw a couple who were with each other. Both of them seemed to be in their early 40s. The woman was beautiful, and the man was handsome. Time and tide had polished them like a work of art. Every smile and gesture had an elegant vibe, but they made people feel pleasant when looking at them. Karen Daly looked at them quietly and couldn't move her eyes away because she saw the shadow of Kevin Kyle on them. Karen Daly was very sure that they were Kevin Kyle's parents. However, Kevin Kyle's father was 57 years old, his mother was 50, and they looked like they were in their early 40s at most. Time really showed mercy to them. Karen Daly was lost in her thought. When Kevin Kyle's mother noticed her, her eyes were fixed on her. Hail, Kyle, go in and do your work first. I'll let this little girl walk around with me. Kevin Kyle's mother's gentle voice interrupted Karen Daly's thoughts. Their sight fell on Karen Daly, as if they were asking for information. Karen Daly's heart was beating so fast, as if it wanted to jump out of her chest. They were Kevin Kyle's parents. She should have called them Dad and Mom with Kevin Kyle, but no one introduced her. She was worried that calling them Dad and Mom would be too abrupt and scared them. Just as Karen Daly was hesitating, Kevin Kyle's father looked at Karen Daly and said, Stay with Madam. If anything happens, inform me in time. Kevin Kyle's mother gave him a funny look and said, You always protect me like this. What else can happen to me at home? Then you should go for a walk for a while more. Remember to tell someone when you are tired. Before leaving, Hale Kyle warned her again. Watching Hale Kyle entering the house, Mother Kyle's eyes fell on Karen Daly again. Little girl, you can accompany me for a walk. Okay. Karen Daly wanted to say something, but she was too nervous to say it. Seeing her being nervous, Kevin Kyle's mother smiled and said, You must be new. New? Karen Daly was stunned for a moment, but she soon reacted. It seemed that Kevin Kyle's mother thought that she was a new maid at home. She subconsciously looked at her clothes. She was not wearing something branded, but it was not dirty. Why would she think that she was a new maid?